Hello and welcome to the Ready to Bloom podcast with your host Holly Wharton. Ready to Bloom helps heart-centered women entrepreneurs to overcome their fears, blocks and limiting beliefs so they can be more successful in business. As a heart-centered business owner, you do amazing work. Holly's mission in life is to help you help more people. Help us help more women in business with a quick review of this podcast. It just takes a minute to leave one today over at iTunes. The more women who find out about this podcast, the more we can help women in business. Thank you.
Hello and welcome to the Ready to Bloom podcast, episode 91. This is your host, Holly Wharton. I'm here with today's special guest, Lisa Lister from The Sassy She. Lisa is an author of Code Red, Know Your Flow, Unlock Your Monthly Superpowers, and Create a Bloody Amazing Life. Period, is a menstrual maven and creatrix of the She Flow protocol, yogic feminine movement, body stories, and ancient menstrual health practices. And she's dedicated to helping women crack their lady code and love their lady parts. I love that. Welcome, Lisa.
Oh, thank you so much for having me, Holly. I'm really excited to be here. Thank you.
I'm so excited to have you here today. So why don't you tell us a little bit about your background and your business journey and how you got to where you are today with helping women love their lady parts?
Okay, so I was a freelance journalist for a lot of the teen magazines here in the UK and some in the US when I was a bit younger. So like Just 17 in the US, Ms, Sugar, magazines like that. So I spent a lot of time meeting pop stars. You know, I was an agony aunt for Ms for 8 years. And my life was just really goal orientated. You know, this is exactly what I'd wanted to do as a kid. I was living my dream. It felt amazing. And you know, and on the surface, like my life was really pretty awesome. I was engaged to this great writer. I'd got my own publishing contract with HarperCollins. You know, we bought a house. Wow. Yet, whilst all that was happening, there was this really kind of I was getting really crazy, painful bleeds each month, period pains, and they got so debilitating that I would have to take entire days off work. You know, sex got really painful, and I was forever cancelling meetings and social events, which got me a bit of a reputation as a flake, because there was no way that I was willing, because of how I'd been brought up, because of how society kind of deems kind of menstruation and kind of talking about it, there was no way I was actually going to tell them what was happening, because that would have been embarrassing. So anyway, I went after a few months of complete misdiagnosis of going to the doctors and I don't know what this is, and you're just going to have to change this, you're going to have to do this. I was told, after I had lots of tests, I was told I had endometriosis. So I was glad in a way that I had finally got a name for it, that the doctors had, I was like, right, okay. But then when we give something a name, we also give it power. Yeah. And I think for me at that moment, I left I went to one more appointment, and at the second appointment they were like, do you know what, Lisa, I think the best thing for us to do would be to whip it out. And I'm like, whip what out? What? I was 26 at the time, right? Wow. So, and they were like, yeah, I think it's just best to whip it out. And so there was this real part of me, the career part of me, that was like, you know what, he's right. Like, let's just get it out. Let's just get cracking. Let's move on. If perhaps kids are not for me. It's not something that was on the horizon at the time. Perhaps this isn't for me. Get it out and we can move on.
So hysterectomy and just move on with life.
Yeah, basically. And so that was my option. That was the only option that modern medicine could give me. So I left that appointment, and on leaving that appointment, there was this real like fiery rage in my belly, like a real pain. And it wasn't like the pain that I'd experienced from my period. This was a different pain. This was like a pain from my womb, my ovaries, my vagina, that was saying, do you know what? That's not going to happen. She was pissed. She was pissed that was the option. And I'm really glad that in that moment I was able to tell the difference as well. I think now I'm much more spiritually aware than I was then, but there must have been a little something in me that kind of was like, right, now I know that was my first encounter with the spiritual universal energy that I call she. But at that time, I just knew that was not going to be the option. So that was not the option for me. So I never went back. I never went to any follow-up appointments, and instead I went on this 10-year adventure, really, which has been spent exploring my lady parts. And now I help women to do the same. I want them to access, and because we have this innate feminine wisdom in our womb, and by using ancient practices, knowing our menstrual cycle and understanding our bodies as women, and that they're very, very different to dude kind, yet we try and work in exactly the same way.
That's like the example that we have for how we're supposed to live, and it's so much stronger, I think.
Absolutely. And then that's why I think this is so important, that we actually start talking about it, that we actually start having a vocabulary for it. We haven't even got a name for down there, like, so, we say vagina. Vagina is like a passage,
It's just like one part of the whole region.
Exactly. So I want to help women. And so now my business is helping women to create a bloody amazing life, knowing their flow and working with, working in tune with their rhythms and the rhythms of Mother Nature, because that's what I do myself.
That's excellent. And so how has your life changed as a result of paying attention and living in tune with these cycles?
So my life is so different, and I am so grateful, I think, because I'm so aware of the body that I'm in. I'm aware of my own boundaries. I set clear boundaries now. There's so much more clarity now that I'm fully aware that each month I have access to 4 freaking superpowers that I did, as women, we work on the first 2 elements, 2 phases of our cycle, which is the pre-ovulation and the ovulation, because that is very masculine, and that works in a very and that works with today's society, that we can function in that space.
It's got a purpose.
Exactly. It's very doer, and we can do and we can be, and that fits. We fit then. But then when we move into the second part of our cycle, not so much, which is the pre-menstruation and the menstruation phases. And so that's where most women will suffer, because we are surviving that part of our cycle when we're not using it to thrive, which is what we need to be doing. And there's so much juice in those 2 parts of the cycle that we have never been taught, that we just don't understand. And so we see it as a freaking curse when that comes around. And actually, there's so many gems and golden nuggets that we can use in that. So now that I access my entire cycle, now that I've based my entire, my business obviously is about that, but the way that I work, how I take on clients, how I schedule appointments, like today, I knew I'd be day 6 of my own cycle, which means that I've stopped bleeding, which means that I've actually got a vocabulary, which means that I'm able to speak mildly articulately to you. And so I know now that, and that's how I live my life. And I know that's not easy for everyone at first to even contemplate, like maybe my period's not regular. But it's not regular for a reason. So if we get to know our cycle, we can work out why it's not regular, and we can then start to use different methods, different ways in which we can, different practices to regulate them.
I think it's so easy for women to just completely ignore that natural cycle, because so many of us, if you have been on the pill for years, and of course that just changes everything. Birth control, most options out there just completely alter your natural cycle. So do you find it really challenging to work with women who are still using those methods and perhaps aren't in touch with their natural cycle because they just can't be?
Well, and this is the thing, right? So I am no Judge Judy in response to how women use contraception. I get that it's a necessity for some women, that there is a necessity in that to kind of fit with their lifestyle. For me, though, what it's doing is silencing our body's wisdom. We are literally medicating ourselves, and we are silencing our own inner wisdom by taking, because we think that we're controlling our cycle, when actually we're not even having a cycle. That's a hormone induced cycle. So our body hasn't got an opportunity to, so any feminine wisdom you may have is not, you are not able to access whilst using the pill. Of course, I can still work. I still work with women that do take the pill, and we use the rhythms of the seasons and the rhythms of the moon. because the moon, the lunar cycle is roughly translatable to that of our own menstrual cycle. It's just that happens outside, that's an external, and it's great for working with women that have reached menopause and then find this information out and go, why did I not know this sooner? So and the moon is a great way to do that. But for women that are on the pill or using any kind of hormonal inducing contraception, it's possible. But if you could, I work with women that want to come off the pill, or that come off the pill, or maybe want to look into that so that they can understand their own rhythms, their own cycles much more prominently, and hear their own wisdom. For me, that's the most important bit, is that we are hearing what our body wants to tell us, because it's all there. There's a map. Our menstrual cycle is a map to ourselves. You would never need another self-help book again if you just took like a bit of time to know your flow.
Wow, I love that. Now, do you find it challenging to attract clients to you and readers to your books? Because, as you said in the beginning, women aren't used to talking about this stuff.
It's so funny. So I've always done work with women. So I've always, I was an agony aunt for a teen girl magazine, and then I've worked with teen girls through to womanhood. So I've always, but it's mainly been around self-esteem and, well-being. And when I was like, do you know what, this is the crux of everything for me. This is the most important part of it, is this menstrual work. It's the key to unlocking, all of our superpowers. And it was when I realized that, and I started to talk about this out loud in blog posts and in programs, I got such a backlash. People were like, oh, Lisa, when are you going to start talking about the self-esteem again? I love that. And I'm like, this is self-esteem. This is about our self-worth as women. We silence us, our own voice, our stories have all been silenced because we're told that bleeding and all of these things are bad. It's why we keep quiet during menstruation. It's why when people say we're moody, it's because we're about to bleed, and it's a bad thing. Like, yeah, we're moody. That's because we're women, and we get to, we're a contradiction, and we're not consistent. And that is the joy of being a woman. That's the blood and guts of being a woman, literally. And yet we shy away from it. So yeah, it's been an interesting part of the journey. But actually, I think the more, it was definitely a fear for me in the first place. I tried to find different ways and different language to use to make it a little bit more accessible to women. And so my signature program is called Explore Your Lady Landscape. And so I try and be a little bit tongue in cheek about it so that it's not a super serious thing. There's so many programs and things that talk about the hormonal, the sciencey side of it, which is all totally necessary. And there's lots that talk about the deeply spiritual side of it, which I also dig immensely. But there's nothing in the middle that's kind of saying, do you know what? This can really help you to run a business. This can help you to have better sex. This can help you to have just a really nice relationship with your family, because you understand that there are going to be some days when you want to stay in bed and someone needs to chuck you chocolate, and actually that's okay. And it's the okayness. We're so not okay with being okay. We're not okay with resting. We're not okay with that slowing down, with that second half of the cycle. And then that, I feel, is like the biggest work that I'm kind of here to do, and that I'm sharing. Really, like, most people have got the first half of this cycle licked, except they just try and carry it on through, which is why we suffer so much pain. So I think now that women are really starting to understand, there's definitely a shift. There's been a shift in the last year, I've felt, definitely. People talking about awakening the feminine wisdom and all of that stuff, which is great. But there's also been a shift in women thinking, do you know what? There must be something to this. There must be something. I've noticed I've got more clients that women are saying, I'm not putting up with this anymore. Like, Lisa, tell me how I can get off the pill and still not get pregnant. How can I do this? And so there's lots of, there's definitely a shift. I can feel that energy moving, and that feels great for me.
Excellent. So can you tell us a little bit about what your top tips are for how to start tracking your cycle and how that can help your business? Because I think, a lot of our listeners probably they're probably not even sure where the heck they are in their cycle at this point in the month, and how tracking that cycle can help them in their business and in their life. I know that's a big question, but
oh, no, that's cool. I'll try and keep it as short as possible. So yeah, knowing your flow for me would be like the top tip for any woman, and the easiest way to do that is to chart your cycle, which I have in my new book, that you can access this cycle repair kit, which is for anybody who's never even looked at their cycle before. So if you get code red, there's just like a downloadable program that you can, a free downloadable program that you can just have, and there's charts, and it's not, and I've made it super fun. It's not like, oh my goodness, if you're planning to get pregnant, you have to chart, and so if you're planning not to get pregnant, I have to chart. What's with that? But really, it is super fun because it really is the most amazing way to get to know yourself. So I suggest that women do that for 3 months. And really, just start every day. Like, so day one is the first day you bleed. So the day you bleed is your day one. And then you see how long your cycle is. So and you can just journal it. You don't even have to have a chart. It's just each day, just write down some thoughts and feelings that come up for you in that day. And over the 3 months, and, you can really, and anything shorter than that, you don't really start to see any patterns. But on the third month, you can start to see that there are certain days, there are certain power points for you. There are superpower days where you could get stuff done. So the first part of our cycle is the spring, is the pre-ovulation stage. Sorry, that's your get shit done stage. That's where you can, you can schedule meetings, you can have great ideas. Then we have ovulation. That's your like expressive stage. That's where you can be out there. This is where you can do public speaking really well. And then we come into the premenstrual phase, and that's a time for us to get really like an editor, so it'd be a great time that if you're writing a book or if you're writing web copy, that you can really edit work, because we get super critical around that time. One of the hot spots in that time is also that we can get super critical of ourselves, but that's a whole nother thing entirely. So you have to there's a refinement that needs to happen once we start to learn about ourselves. But in that initial process, just knowing that in your premenstrual stage is actually a really good time to really cut loose anything you don't need. And that's getting ready for our menstruation, which is our time of bleed, which is actually just a great time to release. But it's also a great time for downloads. It's when you'll get amazing ideas if you slow down, if you stop. And I really encourage women to really, if you can, especially if you're working for yourself, like on a bleed day, preferably day one or day two, to really try and schedule that as either a day off or a day where you can read, or a day where you can just be with yourself. If it's not a day, make it half a day. If it can't be half a day, make it an hour. Even if you can't do an hour, it's 15 minutes just to be aware of your bleed for that moment, just to kind of connect in and go, do you know what? I'm pretty amazing. I bleed for 5 days and I don't die. That's pretty amazing. It's a pretty amazing thing to kind of really have that acknowledgement that that's something that happens. And it's actually an amazing process that allows us to kind of renew and let go every month. It's incredible. This is happening in our body. And so so connecting with your body, but also being able to know that each phase has a superpower that you can access that will be great for your business, that will be great for your relationship, and just great for your life.
I love your description of all of that, because I once read a book about this. I think it was last year. I forget what it was, but it was the whole thing about tracking your cycle and knowing what to do when. And it was so damn boring. And I never implemented it. I read it and I was like, oh, this is really good. I can really apply this in my life. And then I did nothing with it. And it's sitting on my shelf. And I'm just like, do I get rid of it? Because I'm obviously not going to do anything with it.
For sure. And I think that's the biggest driver for me as well. I love the spiritual stuff. I love the hormonal stuff, but I'm also a girl in this world that loves shoes and lipstick and loves to work and loves and loves to do well as well. And if you're an achiever, which a lot of women have been programmed to be, it's like, how do I still get to do those things? And you can achieve more if you know when to rest.
Yes.
And it's just understanding some of those and I just want to make it fun. I don't want to do anything that's not fun. So why would I expect other women to?
Exactly. And I think a lot of times I beat myself up because there are some days where I just don't get stuff done. And I think,
yes,
damn it, I started out with my 3 most important actions for today and I did like one of them kind of, and the other two I didn't even look at. And I just feel awful about myself. But I'm thinking, like, maybe it's just the wrong part of my cycle to be doing that stuff. And maybe I need to be paying attention to when I need to be scheduling what.
Exactly. And I think as well, it's another thing that society has given us to beat ourselves up with. You know, it's like that whole dude kind are linear. That it's really easy for them to set themselves like 3 important tasks each day, you know, and then get those 3 important tasks done and get those 3 important tasks done. You know, that's how my husband works. It's very easy to work that way. And so then for us, we're like, yeah. And so that can work for us, you know, the same with an exercise regime, you know, the same with a diet, same with anything, you know, you can guarantee that energy, that initiation to start anything new would have come at the beginning of our cycle. You know, if you were to track it, you would, you know, I would pretty much guarantee that. But then come the second half of our cycle, that's not going to roll the same way because we're not linear, you know, we're liminal. And that means we live from moment to moment and experience to experience. So there's going to be some days when, like, going for a 10-mile run feels amazing. Then there's going to be other parts of our cycle where that's just not going to roll for us. And when we know that, it's like, you can breathe a sigh of relief.
Yeah, it's like it all makes sense. And like you said about being, you know, the moments where you're critical of yourself and it's good for editing, but then you can also be critical of yourself. If you know that and if you're aware of that, then you can be like, oh my God, that's why I'm beating myself up today. It's just that part of the cycle. And I can just channel that energy towards something else that I can be critical of that's more useful.
Absolutely. And it's just like, and you realise how much we do beat ourselves up for. That for me was the biggest part. When I discovered this for the first time, it was like, wow, these are, and I still do it. I'm not saying I'm perfect in any stretch of the imagination. And actually, it's my husband that will pull me up on things and go, whoa, where are you at in your cycle? You must be like day 24 because you are super critical and there is no need for that. And it's just like, wait up, he's totally right. That's annoying. And but yeah, and it's great. And, you know, it really helps if you can get your family on board. But that's the most important bit, is you having that awareness, because then everybody else around you will benefit from that as well.
Yeah, I think that's really, really important. Just becoming aware of what happens at each point in the cycle and just understanding how that affects you. That's huge.
Yeah.
So, Lisa, how can other women in business or just women in general benefit from working with you? Because you've got your book, Code Red, which just came out this month, didn't it?
Yes. April. Yay!
Excellent, yay! And also you've got a number of programs. So tell us a little bit about how people can work with you and benefit from your wisdom.
So the She Flow protocol involves and She Flow is she is you, but she is me, and she is also the divine wisdom that we find in our womb, and she is the bigger source too. You know, and if we can align all of those, then we can kind of connect with ourselves and with her, and that's where the flow comes in, so that we don't keep, you know, so we're no longer stuck in a kind of habitual beating of ourselves up because we're not good enough. We're actually creating flow in our lives and in our body. So a big part of that for me is through movement. So I do She Flow yoga classes and they'll be online as well as in person. I do She Flow massage, which is a real like abdominal, and it's old, you know, it's sacred massage, you know, and it gets right down into into your womb. And so if you suffer from any kind of menstrual health dis-ease, you know, in your body, or there's any kind of menstrual health issues for you, then that's really beautiful and beneficial and can really start to shift. So there's movement, there's massage, and there's practices which I share in my online program, which is Explore Your Lady Landscape. And that's my signature program, which women seem to really love because, again, I keep it fun. But it's such important integral work that can be the foundation of your business and of your relationship and of your life. So all that is available and will be it's all available on the sassyshe.com.
Excellent. Okay. And tell us a little bit more about Explore Your Lady Landscape. So does that just walk people through the process of starting to track your cycle and get to know yourself and your rhythm?
Yeah. So it's a 28-day program which has a daily email. And in each email you can, so the email program is then yours. So we do it during February and we do one in September as well. So we do it twice a year. And so you get the email daily. You can then keep that email set and start it on the day of your bleed and follow your bleed through. So you absolutely, and follow your period cycle, through, so that you totally understand what is happening to you each and every day. There's also like a charting program, and I do weekly classes where we talk and we answer questions, and it's about your cycle, but it's also about, more importantly, being a woman and totally understanding as much as we can understand, because the beauty of a menstrual cycle, it means that each month we're unfolding and we're unfurling, and something new is available for us to be discovered about ourselves if we are tuned in, if we are aware. Mm-hmm. So that's what Explore Your Lady Landscape is. And so the book Code Red, which is just out, is all of that entwined into a nice, easy to read. It's not super hormonal. It's not like super sciencey. It's not super deep. It's just really accessible. I want to make these practices, I want to make this knowledge as accessible as possible for modern day women who are juggling families, doing business, setting up their own businesses, and just doing life, really.
Yeah. So where can people find Code Red? Is that on your website or Amazon? It's available through Amazon, but you can find out all about it over at sassyshe.com, and the same with the program. But if you sign up for I do a weekly newsletter where I share discounts and all good stuff as well. So make sure you sign up for that. Okay, good. Programs. Excellent. So Lisa, do you have any women business mentors, or are there any women in business who inspire you?
So my business mentor is she. I think I spent so much, when I was starting out as a businesswoman, I started out, I was forever looking around, looking at other people, comparing myself, competing. And I did feel like competing, because I was so unaware of this way of working in my cycle. And so now I realise actually that as women, we should be supporting each other, and we should be really, and there is a lot of competing. And I think sometimes when we put people on a pedestal, that can really encourage that competition to come up in us and come up as fire and not as a sisterhood. So for me, I realised as I started to do this work that actually I can look around me, I can really appreciate what other people are doing and see that there are amazing women doing amazing things. But actually, if I get stuck in business now, or if I haven't got, every launch I do, every book I write, every program I create is done on the mat. I get on the mat and I meditate and I clear some space, and then I download. And so I wait until I bleed, and I take a whole cycle with it, and so there's a real process that I work with her now in order to create and do. So she's my kind of mentor, she's my business partner, she's my advisor, and if I need guidance, that's how, I will get on the mat, I will meditate, I will move until I have an answer. Really, I'll move this body in order to get that answer and know that I've got that in me.
Oh, I love that. Thank you. Thank you, Lisa. So can you tell us a little bit, I know you've mentioned it again, but where can people find you online? Your website and your social media stuff?
All at thesassyshe.com.
Perfect. And you're also on Facebook and Instagram and Twitter as well.
Instagram is my total favourite, though. Yeah. Come on there. I'm Sassy Lisa Lister. And Instagram is my total favourite. But I am on Facebook too,
Good. All right. Well, thank you so much for joining us today. It was such a pleasure to talk to you and to realize that this whole cycle tracking thing can be fun and not just this boring, oh my God, I'm never going to do it thing.
Total pleasure. I hope it helps.
Oh, definitely. And I'm definitely going to be checking out your book. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. And thank you for listening. And remember to visit readytobloom.com/91 for the show notes on this episode. Thank you.
Thanks so much for listening to the Ready to Bloom podcast with your host, Holly Wharton. If you enjoyed this episode, remember to head over to iTunes and leave us a quick review of this podcast. Thank you.